Hey everyone, it's Brian from Brian's Kitchen. Today we are smoking a brisket, and I thought what better way to learn how to trim a brisket than to ask my local butcher Dalton over here at Oliver's Butcher and Catering to show us exactly how to do that. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it. Okay Dalton, so show me exactly how to trim a brisket because I've only done it once or twice. So I know aerodynamics are something that's important.
Yep. Yeah, aerodynamics are very important, especially when you're working with any kind of an offset or a pellet smoker, because it works from left to right. So you want it to be aerodynamic, so it'll just feed all the way straight across.
Yeah.
If there's any kind of flap in the way, it'll hit that flap, go over, and not touch the rest of the meat. You want it aerodynamic so that it coasts over the entire piece of meat and gets an even smoke throughout. One of the biggest mistakes I see with brisket for people at home is that they will actually over trim it. There's the fat inside of here, inside of the decal, which a lot of people will completely remove that, which if you're going to boil it or do something like a pastrami, it may not be too bad. But for the sake of aerodynamics, you don't want to do that. And if you're smoking it, if you get pepper or something in there, it just winds up being like uncooked pepper kind of in the middle. Right. You don't really want that. The other thing to look for is any kind of gray area like this. What that actually is that's where they split the cow. Yeah, okay. So that's actually the middle of the chest right there when they take their searing knife down. That's what that gray is, and you want to remove all that as well. It becomes a little bit of tough. Right. And any trimmings, always, of course, save. You can make great burgers out of it and great sausage as well.
So basically, we're going to be able to save all the trimmings for other things. Nothing's going to go to waste. That's kind of the idea, right?
No, 100%.
Where are we going to start? We're going to start on the fat side down.
Yeah, right now we're going to start fat side down, and we're going to round it off here to make it a bit more aerodynamic.
So you don't want points is what you're trying to say, right? Because those tend to curl up in the cook, I think, and create pools.
Exactly, and it's definitely going to be slightly uneven compared to the rest of the area here. First things first, I'll wind up taking a bit of it off. Just squaring it off like this, and then I'll go into rounding. Now, if it's flatter, you don't need to worry about that, but this was almost a triangle, so we're going to take off that little point there, set that aside, and then just round it. We're going to do this in a few cuts.
I guess it's important to have a really sharp knife for this.
You want a good sharp knife for this. That is absolutely correct. If you have a dull knife, see a local butcher and see if they'll sharpen it for you. We do that here.
Here's a question. If we don't have the proper tools to do this at home, can I ask the butcher to trim it for me before the cook?
Absolutely, 100%. Great question. But make sure you're asking your butcher to trim it as if it's going on a smoker.
Gotcha.
Because if you ask them to trim it, they'll probably take out all that fat in the decal that we were talking about.
Right, okay.
Yeah, because a lot of people, they don't necessarily want to pay for that fat, but it's kind of required when you're going to be doing a really long smoke and a dry process like that.
Well, you can use a lot of that fat for making your own beef tallow and stuff, which seems to be all the rage these days. So
we're going to actually just flip it over and take a look here and see where we're at. So there's a bit of a flap here.
Yeah.
We're going to wind up taking that and squaring it off just a little bit. We're not going to get rid of all that meat, but just so it's a little more even.
What do they call that? They call that the
decal.
Yeah, that's it, the decal.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I mean, it's from the half that people refer to as the point. This is the point.
And then there's the flat.
And then the flat, yeah. So this is definitely the more lean end. If for any reason you could only smoke half a brisket, make sure you pick the point. You pick the flat, it's going to wind up really dry by the end of it. We're going to tack the point end here, similar to how we did the flat end, and just try to round it off a little bit. It's very similar to the flat end. You want it to be aerodynamic, and even throughout. Next, we're going to take off this little gray band that we were talking about here. It's still great for burger meat or anything like that. And better to take your time, do it in a few cuts, so you can take as little off as possible while getting,
Yeah, because I've seen some other videos where they just really, they take off 2 inches worth and they just rip the whole thing off. And I'm like, okay, well, that seemed a little excessive, you know, but...
it can get to be way too much, and you're losing a lot of product there that you don't need to lose off of that end. And now that kind of the regular shaping is done, we can go towards the excess fat.
Okay.
I would caution on the side of taking too little off than I would taking too much off here.
So how much fat would you want? Like quarter inch,
Exactly.
half inch, like that
Yeah,
type of thing?
you're looking around a quarter inch. If it's a little more, it's not too bad. If you're worried about your knives at home, or if you're, afraid you don't have the skill and it wasn't trimmed to your exactly thin enough, it's better to leave too much on, because when you're carving it later, you can always cut it off.
Right,
But if you go too low, the meat's going to be exposed. You can't really fix that.
Show us how we're going to shave this down.
Yeah.
And what on the other
simple.
side, are we taking off any of the silver skin and any of that kind of jazz? Like, does any of that need to come off? Is it going to burn in the cook?
Like anything excess that's falling off like this?
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I really don't go too far with it. I find it just protects the brisket, if anything. When you're going so long, it's going to render pretty well.
Okay.
This isn't really a silver skin. It's more like a membrane, so it will cook back.
Right,
But you just want to make sure there's no flaps hanging up, like you said, that are going to burn or anything like that. And I'll probably take off just a tiny bit of this fat, but not too much.
Any like hard fat, right?
Yeah, exactly. You want that nice fluffy stuff. And if there's a corner here that, like, as you can see, it's not quite perfect for the aerodynamics part.
Right.
You could take that a little bit off as well and round it off a little bit better, and then take just a little bit of fat off. You still don't want it, all the way to the meat, but instead of that kind of harder fat, you want that nice white fluffy fat.
Yeah, right.
That people talk about, right?
The pillowy fat.
Exactly. As you can see here too, like I was saying, one side has way less fat than the other.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So
you definitely, it looks like it's almost perfect right around here, but then you just want to shave that end off a little bit. Then.
Exactly. This still isn't too much, but it's a little more than what we want. We want to expose, like you said, the pillowy fat. So we've got this big chunk here. That's the first thing I'm going to try to go after. Just on a nice angle.
And like having that sharp knife, especially on, really soft fat like that, it's so hard to cut through if you don't have a sharp enough knife.
It is. One thing too that could help you, especially at home, is before you do this part, stick it in the freezer, honestly, for like half an hour.
So it firms up. Yeah, right.
But if it's a bit firmer, it'll have some resistance to your knife and allow you to do the work that you really need to do on it. Like I said before, don't throw any of this out. It's fantastic for burgers. This would be my #1 choice. And the fat, of course, you can use for straight up tallow or just blend it into your burgers. And even if you don't have a grinder at home, if you grab a chef's knife, you just chop through that a whole bunch. It'll get there. And this is getting pretty close. I'm just taking off the chunks that seem like it's still too fatty, too thick. There. And that's about how you want it. It'll cook a lot more evenly.
And then it shrinks a lot too, right? From the fat rendering out. And
brisket really does shrink a lot. You're probably looking at about a 30% shrinkage.
Kind of like it was in the pool. It was in the pool!
But this is about it.
We're ready to season. Sounds good. Thanks very much, Dalton. I appreciate it.
Thanks, buddy.
So now that we're back at home and I have my professionally trimmed brisket, all that's left to do is to season it. So all we're going to do is we're going to start off with a binder, which I'm just going to use yellow mustard. I'm just going to rub that in, and don't worry, you're not going to taste the mustard if you're like, I hate mustard, but it's okay. You're not really going to notice it at all. It's just going to help all the seasonings adhere to the brisket. And we're just going to flip it. More mustard. I always like to keep a dry hand and a wet hand so that I can have a nice clean hand while I'm touching all my spices and stuff like that, and my wet hand will be for doing this kind of stuff. The next thing on the docket here is we're going to start off with a little bit of black pepper. And I like to use the really coarse black pepper because I love the Texas style brisket because it's a lot more black peppery. So I'm not trying to do a ton here. I'm just trying to put on a nice light coat, and then I'm going to go in with Meat Church's Hickory Spice. And this is a new one. This is exclusive to, well, their website and to Ace Hardware stores. Try to season it from higher up. And don't feel like you're ever going to over season this because it's a giant piece of meat. Don't worry. You have to season all of it. You're never going to over season this. Make sure you lift it up on the sides here too to get the sides. Flip that around. Get over here. And then I'm also just going to hit it with a little bit of my own salt, pepper, garlic mix that I made on my own, which is basically just like a 2 parts pepper, 1 part kosher salt, 1 part Lawry seasoning salt. I just want to do a nice light dusting with that. Like I said, you're not really going to over season this at all, so don't worry about that too much. So add a nice combination of flavors in there. I'm just going to pat that in. Just realized I forgot the point here with a little bit of this stuff. Don't want to forget any spots. Okay, now we flip. We're going to start off with the black pepper again. We're just going to lightly dust that. Okay, now we go back in with our hickory. I know it looks like a lot of seasoning. Trust me, I know. When I first started doing this, I felt like it was a lot, but trust me, you lose some seasoning when you put it on the barbecue. But this is going on a smoker, so we're hoping not to lose anything. Here we go. Getting it on all those sides still. There we are. Now we're just going to finish it off again with my own salt, pepper, garlic. Nice little light dusting there. Pat that all in. Now I'm just going to let this adhere for at least 15 minutes. I'm actually going to let it adhere for a couple hours before I put it on the smoker. Okay, so there's really not much left to do, but put her on the grill now. So I got the Traeger set to 200 degrees. We're going to cook this thing with fat side up on the second rack, just like that. And as you can see in my tray here, I've got a bunch of the leftover fat. That's all just going to render down along with the fat that's going to drip over. So I'm going to put that right underneath it. Also kind of acts as a little bit of a heat barrier, so it doesn't get burnt or anything like that. But we're going to let this thing sleep overnight for a good 12 hours until it reaches 165, 170, and then we can wrap it. Okay, so it's been about 12 hours. Haven't looked at this yet, but it's been running all night. And we're going to just check the temperature here. As you can see, I'm at about 166, 167. I think that's about ready to wrap. So we're going to take this off and wrap it up. So we're in the wrapping stage of the brisket, and as you can see, my butcher paper likes to continue to roll back to me. So there's an easy way to prevent that from happening. You just spray the table, make it nice and wet. This is just apple cider vinegar that I'm spraying. And this will help to keep the paper at bay. So we're going to lay one down. You can see that was really nice. Now we're going to spray this as well. As you can see, it just helps to keep everything nice and flat. Like so. And we're just going to spray this down. Now we're ready to put the brisket on here. We're gonna bring it on over. I like to set mine about there. All these drippings from the brisket, this is all tallow. We're just gonna pour over top of it. That looks pretty nice. Make it nice and wet. I'm going to add a little bit more actually too. I found beef tallow at Costco, so I'm going to try a little bit of this. Put a nice big spoonful there. Nice big spoonful there. So now I've got my tallow on there. We're just going to wrap it all up. And what I want to do is, just going to push this a little bit forward. I want to wrap it up nice and tight. Like this, okay? Bring this forward. Okay, as tight as you can. Okay, now we're just gonna fold this in a little bit, like that. Now it's ready to go back out onto the barbecue, or the smoker. Okay, back onto the smoker we go. Now I'm going to crank up the heat to about 250 for a couple hours. And we're going to leave that running for a few hours until it hits about 203, 204. And then we're going to pull it off and rest it for a good long time. Okay, so we're going to check the brisket. It's been basically another 3 hours since I put it at 250. We'll check the point here. So we're at about 208. And then the flat, we're at about 204. Around the same. So that means it's time to go. We're going to take this off. I'm going to put it in my tray here. We're going to let it rest. And it's important to know we're going to let it rest outside here so we can stop the cooking. We're going to let it come down to about 150. And then to keep it warm, I might put it back on here at about 165, the lowest it can go, just to keep it warm while it's resting. Okay, so it's been resting on my smoker since basically 11 o'clock. It is now 5 o'clock. That's a good long rest time. Kept it at a nice 150 the entire time. Let's just unwrap this and see what we got. It's been sitting in a nice pool of its own juices. Oh yes, look at that. Ain't she pretty? I like that. Okay, whew. Yes, we're going to put that right here. I'm going to pour some of the juices on top of there. Okay, so now, here goes nothing. I'm just going to see how good this turned out. So here's the point, here's the flat. This is all where all your lean meat is. This is where the fattier meat is. And the muscles kind of connect like this. So actually, in this case, it'd be like this. So I'm just trying to cut right down the middle here. Here's the big reveal. Oh yes, look at that. All the juices squeezing out of there. Isn't that wonderful? Look at this. Oh yeah, nothing wrong with that. Nice smoke ring. All that wonderful juice is pouring out of there. Gonna have to try it. Can't just sit here and not eat any. And so you know what? I'm gonna give Paige the first taste test. Since she's been so patient and she's been waiting. Look at that, it's just pouring out of it. Ooh. Oh yes. Oh, I'm gonna try some first, okay? Huh? Oh. Mm-hmm. Here, let's give you a non-so fatty piece. What do you think? Yep.
That was so good.
Mm-hmm. I'm telling you.
The heck?
Oh my goodness, yeah. I'm gonna give a piece to the camera lady. See how she likes it. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm. There's juices everywhere. It's all over my countertop. Nothing wrong with that. Now, of course, with the fattier part, you got to cut it this way because the fibers run differently. But I love this little part, the part that kind of, it's like the nub, but I'm not going to cut there. I'm going to cut right here. Yes. And I can't help it. I love all of it covered in seasoning, so. Even though there's fat, it like melts in your mouth. It's so good. So if you like what you saw here today and you like the meat that I prepared, subscribe for more videos just like this one. The meat came from Oliver's Butcher and Catering from my good buddy Dalton, who's at the corner of Clare Street and Quaker Road. We'll see you guys next time. I got a lot of eating to do.